Good morning, What's Your Why listeners. We have a new episode of the What's Your Why podcast out today with Amie Northagen. She is an old friend from Red Lobster, and I've been kind of following her on social media ever since she moved out to um, the Seattle area and became a mountaineer. I am a huge fan of mountaineering, and I think it'd be so cool to take up one day. But she's kind of living that dream right now, and so I really wanted to hear about her story of how she got out there and how she kind of started chasing after the mountains and climbing mountains like she is now. So check out this episode. I think you guys are gonna love it, and let me know what you think, or give it a share on your social media if you're interested. But I appreciate you guys, and come back for more next week. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm
Yeah,
excited.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I really just want to hear about the mountains and whatnot. Like I know we're both from North Dakota. As far as I know, you're from North Dakota, right?
Yes, born and
Yes.
raised.
Okay. And like small town North Dakota and moved out to the mountains. And I'm like just so jealous recording this from Fargo. But I guess I want to let you introduce yourself, everything like that, kind of like what I usually do. So go ahead, introduce yourself, and like, where are you from?
Yeah, so I'm Amie Northagen. I was born and raised in Thompson, North Dakota, which is just like 10 miles south of Grand Forks. So small town, like I graduated with 34 people, if that helps give you a better idea of size. So had an upbringing there and then ended up moving to Fargo for college. I went to NDSU and then worked there a couple years after. And all the things that I'm sure we're going to get into kind of led me to where I am now, which is just north of Seattle in Washington. And I've been here now for about 4.5 years.
Okay, right on. So you growing up in like small town Thompson, what was like your kind of like day-to-day life like? What were you doing for hobbies? What were your interests?
When I think back to like my childhood, I just remember like having a lot of fun. I grew up with a really close family. I have two older sisters, and a goofy, loving set of parents. And I feel like we just always had a ton of fun. And we were never like super outdoorsy and like camping. We did some camping trips and we did road trips and all that kind of fun stuff. But I think one thing that was really cool about my upbringing was our parents were really awesome at kind of letting us pursue what it was that piqued our interest. Like I was very much an athlete. I was really into sports. Moving my body was always kind of like my enjoyment. And my middle sister was like totally different. She got into horses and she like barrel raced and showed. So we had a ton of variety in our family, which I think was really fun because we were exposed to so many different things. And I think it kind of taught us to sort of keep an open mind and just try new things and see how it goes. So yeah, growing up, a lot of it was just like hanging out with family. Like I said, I was very much an athlete in high school and growing up. I was a gymnast for a long time. And I played volleyball. I dabbled in basketball when I got too injured to continue on with gymnastics, and did a little bit of fast pitch and that stuff. So yeah, but I think kind of typical like small town North Dakota upbringing,
That makes sense.
And, bonfires and all the good stuff. So
Yeah, it sounds very similar to Kindred.
yeah.
So what made you come to Fargo for NDSU? What was your kind of goals there?
I think I wasn't ready to like move super far away. In-state tuition being lower was obviously a nice draw, but I think it was the idea of like moving a little bit of ways away to Fargo was appealing, and it was just kind of the right fit. So and our home seemed far enough at that time. So
did you have ambitions to move at that time or like move far away from North Dakota, but you just like or was NDSU far for you?
NDSU was kind of far. I will say, so I had family in Washington growing up. So we had come out here a couple times for like holidays and visits and that kind of thing. And I remember when I was younger, I wanted to move to Seattle. So I had considered going to like UW for a little bit, but when it came down to it, I just didn't want to go that far. And I wouldn't even say I was like inspired by the mountains at that point either. So yeah, Fargo was just kind of like the right move at that point.
Yeah, I wanted to go to Bozeman when I graduated. And I got accepted and everything. And I just decided to go to NDSU as well.
Yeah. I don't know.
It had what I wanted to. So I think the same exact thing as you. But so what did you go into?
I work in marketing and communications, public relations
Mhm.
now. I will say I was like all over the place in college. I think I came into college as like an undecided major, and then I like went for exercise science, and then I scrapped that, and I tried hospitality, and I scrapped that, and I tried a couple other things, and eventually landed on communications. And I think what appealed to me about communications was that you can kind of work in virtually any industry. Like I've worked for John
Mhm.
Deere, I've worked in nonprofit, I've worked in healthcare. So I was like, well, this is a career that could take me a lot of different places and I could experience a lot of different things with it. And so that's kind of like my uninspiring reason why I like went into this industry.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's led me to a lot of really fun experiences, and I'm happy with where I'm at now. So
Sweet. Sweet. Yeah. I feel the same way. Granted, the field I went into is very specific. It was ag education. So
nice.
like you're basically, if you stick with it, you're destined to go back to a small town and teach FFA and ag education. And I'm nothing against it. I couldn't be with students every day. When I
Yeah.
students taught, I was like, I cannot do this.
Yeah.
And so I also had a brief stint in exercise science, and it was switched for about 3 hours. Then I switched back because the lady said you have to be here for 5 more years. I don't know why it added on a year, like
You're like,
not just like 5 years total, but like 5 more. And so I was
yeah.
very confused by that. But no, it's I think it's weird how people end up being in like many different roles. And I'm kind of back into an education role now, which is cool, and I'm very excited about it. But like I was just in sales and doing random things in grad school that were not like part of my field at all. So it was cool. But so what'd you do in like when you were at university for like fun, and like what was your social life like back then?
I think like typical college activities,
Okay.
and got into like some intramural sports and that kind of stuff. Played some volleyball with some friends, and I got into running half marathons, which was kind of like a weird turn because I think I tried track in high school for like 4 days and I hated it. Like I hated running. I was like, this is not for me. And then I moved in with a gal, Lauren, who was a really fun roommate to have, who ran marathons. And I was like, that sounds fun. So there was probably like 2 years where I was doing a bunch of running, and that took up a lot of my time. But yeah, and then obviously working at Red Lobster, where I think we got introduced. Good old Red Lobster.
Good old lob.
Good old lob. Yeah. So yeah, I think just kind of typical college stuff.
No. Well, you gotta respect the lob first of all, and everybody needs to serve at some point in their life. Yeah.
Yes. Agreed. You gain a lot of empathy for like servers and retail workers and the whole 9 yards when you have to be on the other end of that, on the receiving end.
So, and like when it takes so long to get something, but you realize like they stopped at 4 tables after you, and they like get things for everybody as you come back out. It's one of those
I'm
things
always like the overly empathetic one, like at the table when we're out to eat. They're like, where are they? Or like, why is this taking so long? I'm like, there could be something's probably going wrong. Like I've been there, like just give them time. It's like an hour later. I'm like, they're fine. Like
but sometimes it is like really bad. And it's like, oh, this person is just a bad server. Or having just a terrible day.
Yes. But, so true.
So true. So you how long after graduating did you move out to Seattle?
I graduated in 2017 and I ended up moving in 2019.
Okay, so like fairly quick.
Yeah, I worked at United Way for 2 years, which is an amazing job, and a really awesome crew to work with. But yeah, I think moving to Washington had kind of been in my sights, and I think my mom and I have different opinions on this, but I would say like the mountaineering outdoor bug kind of bit me towards the end of my college career and then post grad, which I can get into. But I was actually on the phone with my mom the other day because I've just been thinking about like what's my why and like kind of reliving my decision to like move out here for mountaineering. And I was on the phone with her, like trying to pinpoint when that moment was. And I was like, yeah, I think it was maybe end of college, like post grad, but I don't really know what it was. And she was like, no, Amie, it was like way back in the early 2000s. And she recalled, I don't really have conscious memory of this, but she recalled the road trip we took to South Dakota, and we went and saw Devil's Tower, which is like this massive pillar that comes out of the ground. It has like these scratch looking marks all over the sides and stuff. And it's a huge climbing destination. And I was probably, it was like 2002. So I had to have been in second grade. And so it's maybe 8. Is that how old you are in second grade? Somewhere around there?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I was a youngin'. And she said, I saw people like going up Devil's Tower, like climbing. And she's like, you just lit up and you were so enthralled. And you were scrambling all over the rocks. And like, you wanted to get closer and you wanted to look at it. And she's like, you looked at me and you were like, I'm going to climb that one day. Like, I want to do that. And she's like, ever since then, she's like, I think you were just like destined to do that. And she said, even on the drive out, I was like looking up at the mountains and I was like picking out climbers and things. And it was kind of funny to come across like a photo of me in front of Devil's Tower and sort of hear that story relived. Cause like I said, I don't really remember that, but it's kind of a full circle moment. And now it's a goal of mine to climb Devil's Tower, but
I was going to ask, have you climbed it?
I have not. It's on the list along with many other things.
Do you trad climb?
I am slowly getting there. Working on it. I saw that you climbed too. I saw you took a trip out to Nevada or somewhere to get on the sharp end a little bit.
Yeah. So we've been in Nevada this year. We've been to South Dakota, a little bit in Minnesota, Bozeman. So we've kind of been all over this summer. Awesome. It's been fun. I don't get out like every weekend like I want to. I spread myself way too thin. Yeah. But when I do get out, I have a good time. And it's so fun.
Yeah.
My girlfriend's way better than me, especially like indoors. Or I should rephrase fiance. When she listens to this, she'll be mad. But like technically, like with moves and whatnot, she's way better. Yeah. But like the brave wise, like leading, I have no fear of heights whatsoever. And so I'm perfectly fine like going over my previous quick draws and whatnot. So definitely willing to go higher, but like trad climbing is still a little sketchy to me. I have gear for it. I've just never used it. I haven't been brave enough to. Yeah. But
yeah, it's on the list. I've got a pretty bad lead head at this point. It's been taking me a long time and really it's been a slow process, but I actually right before I moved to Washington, I had a climbing accident where I shattered my kneecap and I messed my ankle up pretty good and I tore my meniscus. And so that was a really hard process to like get over. And I think that comes in my head every time I'm on lead, right? When I'm above my last clip and stuff. So it's been a journey. It's been slow, but it's been progressing more and more. And I think my goal with like trad climbing is to be able to protect like summit blocks of peaks versus like going to Yosemite and sending like 512 trad. So kind of understand what my intentions are with that. But yeah, there's something like really thrilling about leading, but it's scary. It's a head game. And I think if you get in your head too much, even if you're totally capable, like it can get you stuck on a wall. But
one of my friends, his dad was climbing Devil's Tower and it was his last time ever climbing. And they had like 6 pieces of gear come out. And he took his friend took a 300-foot fall, he said, because they're at like the very end of their rope, basically. And the very last piece of gear caught. And this is like 20 years ago. And like the carabiner was like engineering wise was like supposed to just shatter and not bend, but it bent and that's what caught it. And now it's like on display at Black Diamond. That carabiner is, and it took it was like 60 kilonewtons. Is what they try to like figure it out technically like what it would have been, and so it's way more than it was rated for.
That's a lot of force.
Yeah, and because it was like a 250-pound or 225-pound guy falling.
Yeah,
and so it was a lot of weight coming down on that carabiner, and then the partner fell and hit my friend's dad with his helmet in the side of his and broke his ribs. They were both like unconscious for a second.
Oh my gosh.
And then they both like woke up and like rappelled down. But it was a crazy freak accident on Devil's Tower.
But like ultimately okay?
Ultimately okay. They never climbed again. But even like he was talking that his name's Scott. He was talking about how much better gear has gotten since he was doing it. He's like, I have no doubt that if we would have had a gear of today, it'd have been perfectly fine.
That's crazy. Yeah, you have to give props to those guys, all the climbers back in the day. They were they were gutsy, and they did not have the creature comforts that we have
Mhm.
climbing now, for sure. So they really paved
No,
the
I
way.
agree.
They suffered through it.
So you said you think you caught the bug at the end of university.
Yeah,
What was that like?
it kind of took me by surprise, actually. And even now to this day, I don't think I can pinpoint like an exact moment or experience that sort of like launched it
Mhm.
all. I remember climbing with a friend who worked at the rock gym at NDSU, just one day for fun. And then I ended up taking NDSU offered a rock climbing course for a semester for credit. And so I hopped onto that. And I really enjoyed it. Like there was just like something about like the harness and like being on the wall and the feeling of like being on the ropes that I just loved it. And it just like felt right. I don't really know what
Yeah.
it was, but I just wanted more of it. And so after that, I started climbing like at NDSU. And there wasn't a lot of climbing walls in Fargo then. It was, I think it was either NDSU, the Moorhead wall, or there was this little tiny wall at the YMCA that had top ropes. I don't think the bouldering gyms were there yet. I think there's 2 in Fargo now.
No, there's just one now. One went out
Okay.
of business. Because basically all the members transferred from there to the new one. The new one's very nice. But yeah.
I hope to go like next time I visit. But yeah, so I think that was kind of a segue. And then once I graduated, I bought a kayak and I was kayaking on the Red all the time. And one of my friends from college grew up camping, and they were like very adventurous and outdoorsy. And her and I started camping and backpacking on the Superior Hiking Trail out in Minnesota.
Nice.
And I think it just felt right. And so I kept wanting to pursue it, right? Like I think after college, I was very much in the mindset of, I'm just going to try a bunch of stuff and see what sticks, because I'm not totally sure like what I want to do with my life or where I'm going. And so I was really open to trying a lot of new things. And I remember one winter I think it was a Facebook event for the Sandstone Ice Climbing Festival. And I was like, wow, that looks really cool. Like I kind of want to try that. And I looked into it, and it was very beginner friendly. You could rent all the gear you needed. And so I convinced a couple friends to go to that with me. And I think like once I snapped those crampons on, I was hooked. You know, it was just like, and still to this day, like when you put a crampon on, I think it's like a power up. It's like a boost you feel. But yeah, there was just like a ton of really awesome people. And I met like a bunch of great mentors and a bunch of really cool friends that just shared sort of that passion. And I think when you're in that environment with people who are so excited about it, it's hard not to catch it, right? It's so contagious.
Yeah.
And so I just found myself like wanting more and more of it. And I just like, I couldn't stop thinking about it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Was the Ice Fest your first outdoor climbing?
It was my very first outdoor climbing. I'd never even been like climbing on rock outside. I'd only been to like the local gyms in Fargo.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it was humbling because having never ice climbed nor knowing anybody that ice climbs, in my head, I was like, well, I've been gym climbing a lot. So, I mean, it's probably the same thing. And I feel like I'm in shape for it. So I'll be fine. And then I got on the first ice route, maybe halfway up. And I had like the screaming barfies and like my hands were shaking. I like couldn't even grip the tools. And I was like, holy crap, this is really hard. But
yeah, that's nuts. I've never heard of somebody their first time outdoor climbing going ice climbing.
Yeah, it was really fun. And it's such a unique place too, because it's in an old quarry in Sandstone, which is like this tiny little town in Minnesota. And they actually farm artificial ice. So they have this like piping system across the top, from what I understand, where they'll drip down water, and it's just this massive wall of like artificial ice fall that you get to climb on. So
yeah, I'm looking. I've never ice climbed before. I really want to, and so my plan is to go to the Ice Fest this year.
Yeah, you should. There's so many great people, and it's so beginner friendly, and it's a good time. It's cold, but I mean,
what is it like January like 30th? Or something like that. It's end of January or beginning of February, so it's definitely gonna be cold.
Yeah.
No, I'm excited. I like the cold, kind of.
Cool.
But no, I'm super stoked for it. Was that the ice axe behind you that you were using?
No,
on your wall?
It's kind of like my antique relic section and my Zoom background for work. That's actually, it's an ice axe that one of my like mentors and good friends in search and rescue out here, he came across 2 old ice axes and he let me buy one off of him. But this one was used by a guide in like the 60s and 70s who guided out here like on Rainier and in the Cascades. And then I have a couple like ice screws. These are 2 ice screws that someone found on the North Ridge of Baker that I just kind of came into possession of.
Nice.
And then the skis are actually probably my favorite. My grandpa passed away before I moved out here. And we were kind of like going through the barn, and we were like on the old farm, just looking through stuff. And we found these up in the rafters of the garage, and they were super like sun bleached, bird poop all over them. I mean, they've definitely seen better days. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want those so bad. And so I ended up getting them. We got them out to Washington, and the same friend and mentor that let me buy this axe off of him, he actually owned a gear shop back in like the 70s and has just
nice.
Kind of knowledge of a bunch of stuff. So he helped me refurbish and kind of bring those skis back to life. But
Gotcha.
we did a bunch of research, and based on the build and the binding and everything, we think they could be as old as like 1890s.
The skis?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Early 1900s at like the nearest to us. So they've been through a lot. But yeah, that's our best guess. We don't really have any information on them, so just based on like the cut and the tips and the binding.
Did you ever take them out?
No, it's kind of funny. It's truly just a wood plank with like a bead top and a little bit of like an indentation in the back, and then it's just a leather strap. Like that's it's just like one strap over the foot. So
yeah, that'd be a lot different and really hard to get used to probably compared to like conventional skiing.
Yeah, maybe one day I'll take them out and like cross country ski with them. I think if I took it downhill, I'd either break them or myself. So
Yeah, probably. That makes sense. So when you started, like after Sandstone Ice Fest, did you just get the climbing bug in general and just keep climbing in the area, or how'd that go? I
think so. I kept camping and backpacking, and then I think I just kept thinking about Washington more. Like I said, I grew up and I kind of wanted to move to Washington for other reasons, and I think it sort of transformed into wanting to get more into mountaineering. I didn't do a ton of like cragging in North Dakota, Minnesota, but I definitely made some friends at Ice Fest, and I went back for a couple years, and I'd go meet them on the weekends and get some weekends in with some friends out at the ice park. And yeah, it was just like the more exposed I was to it, the more it sort of occupied space in my mind, and I just remember like thinking like I just wanted more of it. Like I think it was the first time. I never was anybody who, like growing up, knew what I wanted to do for work or like where I wanted to live. And like, I didn't really have a partner at that time. And climbing was really the first thing that I sort of felt like this is right. And like, this is a direction I'm supposed to go. And it was kind of the first time I like felt a calling, if you will. That might sound cheesy. But it's
like a lot of people are called to the mountains.
Yeah.
A lot of people can identify with that.
Yeah. And it's just a feeling you can't ignore, as they like to say, like it was living rent free in my head for a really long time.
Okay, so you move out to Seattle. What was like the final straw of going out there?
Actually, I moved out here with my sister, and we had talked about it for years, but it was always kind of like maybe one day, like eventually, whatever. And after I graduated college, it was like, okay, let's set a date 2 years from now, and we're gonna go. Like I don't like no matter where we're at with work, friends, whatever. Like we're gonna go. Like we'll save up money and get going. And then when that date came, it was hard. Like it was a lot harder than I expected, and I think a lot scarier than I expected. And actually that climbing accident definitely threw a wrench in it, because that happened on a Friday in late July. And the following week was my last day of my job, when I was supposed to move out of my apartment. And then the week after that was when I was supposed to move to Washington. And here I am with my leg in a full immobilizer, like my ankle wrapped up, unable to like drive or walk or any of that stuff. So it kind of put a wrench in things, but looking back, I think it was a blessing in disguise, because, my parents took me in for those couple months when I was recovering, and I just got to spend like a lot of quality time with them. But I think that almost made it harder when the day came to like leave. And I think when there's a huge change like that, it's just natural to question it and like be scared of this unfamiliar thing you're going to do. I mean, I remember thinking like, am I making the wrong decision? Like, what if I'm making a huge mistake? Like, what if it doesn't go well? And I remember being so excited, but also really scared at the same time.
Yeah.
And even once we got out here, I mean, it's an adjustment, and you don't really know anybody, and it's hard to start over. And I think moving to Fargo, it was a move away, but I was an hour from home, right? Like I could drive home and have dinner with my parents on a Tuesday night. Like, I had people that I knew that were close by all the time. And there was a growth there in moving to a new place, but you still had the comforts close enough that it wasn't like scary. So moving halfway across the country was definitely it was a lot more challenging than I expected when it came down to it.
Yeah.
You know,
No, I understand that. I moved to Columbus from here, so not quite halfway, but it's like 14 hours. So it was a good distance. Ended up back, but not for long. I hope, ideally. But so you get out to Seattle. Are you like immediately trying to like make friends and get into the mountains, or did you already like know people out there for like mountaineers and whatnot?
no, not really. Facebook is like surprisingly a great resource for the communities out here. There's like a bunch of, you know, different types of mountaineering groups. There's climbing groups, there's women's groups. And so I was just trying to get connected through those. And it kind of just became this progression of like, you know, you meet people and then you meet people through them. And you just kind of keep expanding your network in that way.
Yeah.
And I had looked into different programs. Like there's a group called the Mountaineers out here, which has been a really long-standing group that does a ton of like classes and climbs, and they have like a whole bunch of books that they publish and all these things. There's a couple other groups out here that are like that as well. But I was really fortunate that in my climbing, even from the time I was in sort of Minnesota, I've always kind of found really great mentors who have been able to sort of coach me and teach me things in the mountains. So I ended up not pursuing that path, like with more of a sanctioned organization to learn those skills. But yeah, I think it was just, you know, taking like some one-off courses here and there, like, you know, with lead climbing and some of the other things, and then finding climbing partners and mentors that I trust to learn from. It's just been kind of a continual growth for like the last 4 years, but there's a shocking amount of different avenues you can take to sort of build those skills. And I think it's kind of whatever fits your personality, you know, and your learning style and that sort of thing.
No, that makes sense. I think it's the most appealing type of climbing to me is the mountaineering. And so like, I feel like every week you have a new summit, like you and your friends do or something like that. So it's always cool to watch them like through your Instagram posts. But, and like we do a lot of sport climbing here, and that's like what's available here, really. We don't really have like mountains to summit. And so I think there's something cool about like how long does it take to do like your average mountain?
It all depends. I would say, you know, average mountain, we do a lot of like what's called car to car, which is sometimes people will camp overnight, but we'll try to do it all in one big push. And I would say average is like 12-ish miles and 5,000 gain. And that can take anywhere from like 12 to 14 hours. So a lot of times too, you're getting what's called an alpine start, which is when you start at like 1 or 2 in the morning. So you're hiking up in the dark and you're trying to get to the snow sooner than later. And so you can be out, I mean, consistently moving from like 1 a.m. to 5 p.m. or even later. So it just sort of depends on the climb and the technicality and the terrain that you're moving through. But they're long days. And it's kind of funny because, you know, obviously we post like the really beautiful photos from the alpine and the pics and all these things, but what you don't see is like the bushwhacking through like overgrown trees and the hot rock scrambles through scree fields. And there's a lot of suffering that goes on with it. There's a famous quote that says mountaineering is just mastering the art of suffering. And I think that that's really true.
I believe it.
It's just a lot of walking uphill to get to those really cool places, but it's worth it in the end, you know, and especially if you have good people to go in the mountains with it makes those lamer parts of the trail more fun.
Yeah. So are you like a snack master? Like I feel like I'm pretty good about not let me say that again. I never bring food with me if I do like long type trail runs or things like that, or like a long day hike. But like my fiance is like the snack master, so I always mooch off of her. When you're out there, what kind of nutrition do you have to do?
You know, I think it's being conscious of like how much gain you're doing and how many calories you'll burn. Some people are really good about doing calorie counting. Like they'll figure out how much they're going to burn and how much they need. I kind of have a system where I like think of like X amount of food per 1,000 feet of gain. But I have found my cat might make an appearance. She's up here, so she might jump down.
Okay.
I have found that sometimes when we've been going all day and we're like really high and I'm getting really tired, I just need something that I can eat. Like, cause you kind of lose your appetite when you're sort of in that more strained period. So, you know, I have like granola bars and protein bars and that kind of thing, but usually when it gets to the end of the climb, I'm eating like gummy worms and chocolate and anything to keep me physically and morally going. Pizza's been a really big one this year. Taking some cooked pizza up with us. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are always a great go-to. So, if you talk to anybody who's been in the mountains for a while, I know it's like a starter. Cliff Bar always seems like the snack to go to.
Yeah.
After so long, like you'll never touch a Cliff Bar again. So, and the other thing that's kind of funny is in the winter climbing, you have to make sure it's a snack that's not going to freeze and like break your teeth.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a nutrition guru.
Okay.
It's pretty much what I can get that's high calorie, sort of lightweight, and that I'll have an appetite for.
That seems a lot like endurance trail running. Is like my go-to is pizza and Sour Patch Kids.
Yes. Yep.
So I identify with like Courtney DeWalter, if you ever heard of her.
No.
She's an ultra runner. She's super goofy, but like her thing is like nachos and beer is like her celebration after like every big Saturday training run.
Yeah.
But like she's a crazy good ultra runner. Like probably of like all ultra runners like in the world, she's like men and women, she's like number 2 or 3 probably.
That's awesome.
She's crazy. Yeah.
Well, to hear that my nutrition matches hers makes me feel a lot better about my choices.
Yeah. Well, when she runs like probably 80 to 100 miles a week, and so like it's in the mountains, so she's burning it off all the time. So it just makes sense because like anything that goes in is like combust instantly.
Yeah,
somebody like that. So no, it makes sense. And if you're going from like 1 a.m. to 5 p.m., that's a lot of moving, I feel like.
Yeah. And being like making just like being conscious of making sure that you are eating. I think sometimes like we'll forget to eat and then you bonk, right? Like all of a sudden you're like really tired and you start slogging and it's like crap, I haven't eaten in like 4 hours or 5 hours. So but it's all a learning curve.
So you see like some climbs and like I see like videos of like the famous people, like Conrad or like Jimmy Chin. But like how technical does the climbing get when you're out there in terms of like actual like where you need like a super hard grip and you are I'm probably like butchering like alpinism terms, but like I just think about it in like rock climbing terms where like you have to make a hard move on a wall. How often is that happening where you have to like take off gloves or something like that?
I think it's kind of dependent, right? Like I think Washington offers a ton of variety in that sense. There's some really great like alpine trad climbs that are way above my level and are more advanced. And then you can also find mountains that are like really beautiful peaks and really high and they're walk-ups. You don't need any technical skills to get there. And I find that you pick mountains that sort of match your ability or push it just a little bit. We just climbed a mountain called El Dorado and we did it car to car and it's a pretty big day. And there's the final section of it is this knife edge. And I remember, 2.5 years ago, looking at that mountain and being like, there's no way I can do that gain. Like, I don't think I have the skills to do that. And then we did it this year and it kind of felt like a cakewalk. Like it was
nice.
It was like totally in my comfort zone. Right. And we had a challenge because that knife edge was really icy that I don't think any parties got up the knife edge that day, but we actually teamed up with a couple other teams and combined our knowledge and our gear. And we were able to ascend a different route to get to the summit.
Oh, nice.
So I think it's really just respecting sort of like your abilities and what you're comfortable pushing the limits with and sort of turn around. There's definitely been times where I think I've come across a move or like a crux of a climb and I just don't like it. I'm not comfortable with it. And I've gone back and then done it later in my climbing career and I feel totally fine. So there's a lot of growth to be had there, but I think you can get into some pretty sketchy terrain if you're looking for it or if you get off route, which can be easy to do.
I can imagine it's a lot harder to follow a route in alpinism than it is on a sport route. Yeah,
definitely.
Do you still do like sport climbing or anything like that, or is it mostly just like the alpine climbing?
We do here and there. I would say it kind of ebbs and flows. Like in the spring, I was doing a ton of gym climbing and I wanted to sort of work on like my trad game earlier this spring. And then we kind of hit like alpine season, and I was like, I just want to be on glaciers. Like that's all I want to do. And so my priorities kind of shifted to glaciers for the summer. So, but there's so much to do out here. Like you could live a lifetime and never hit it all. But I think that's what makes it fun too, right? One summer I could focus on glacier objectives, and the next summer I could focus on trad climbs. And there's a lot of climbs too that even have both. You could, it's a glacier to get to the base of the climb, and then it's a little trad climb to get to the top. And so there's a little bit of everything. Not to mention we have the ocean nearby, and like mountain biking trail and rainforests, and there's even like desert climbing across the mountains, which is pretty cool. So
that's wild. I climbed in Oregon at Smith Rock. I don't know how far that is. That'd be like 5 hours from Seattle, probably.
I think so. It's a haul, but it's a cool place.
That was beautiful. That was like my first outdoor climbing trip ever.
That's cool. And Smith Rock's a little sandbagged, I think, too. And they're notorious for having like a very high first clip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so dumb. I still don't have a stick clip. And I've been climbing outdoors for since that was like 2019. And so it's been a long time, and I still haven't bought one. I'm like, oh no, I don't need that. But you spend the same amount of money on like one cam. So it's stupid, but I don't know. I find a slight rush in doing like a mini free solo to your first clip, and then being safe from there. Because like if you do fall, it's not gonna be that far.
Right.
You could obviously mess up your ankle or break your arm, but it's a risk I'm willing to take so far.
Yeah, for the thrill. Smith Rock is cool though, because I think I've read geologically, it's like the remnants of an ancient volcano, like the inside of an ancient volcano, which is what makes those rock structures and stuff. Maybe
that makes total sense.
But
there's no fact checker here. There's we're perfectly fine. If you, like the rock around the rim, I don't know what direction it would be, but kind of as you come in, the big lip, that would make total sense of if it being like a volcanic rock. The big walls you see kind of seem more like a sandstone, or like it'd be like a sandstone, but it's so fun. It's such a cool place. The kid who fell there this summer was super sad, but it was I did the route. It was like my first crack climb.
Oh, nice.
It was a perfect crack climb. You could just like shove your fist in and just lock it.
Yeah.
And it's super solid, but you just kind of have to deal with the pain of the rock on your hand.
Yep.
And you're good. But no, it's super sad that a kid was climbing with his grandfather there. And just
about that.
It was like the kid ended up being, I believe he was fine, but he took a solid fall.
Okay.
And he was like hospitalized for a while, but all in all, he survived. So pretty sad, but crazy at the same time.
Yeah. And it's kind of like the devil that we play with, like in the mountains and stuff. And as beautiful it is and as fun as it is, like there's very real consequence, I think, that comes with it. And it's hard to accept, but it's definitely something like you have in the back of your mind when you're out there. Because you hear about stories of people, and it's like, like a rock slipped out, or like something really small happened, and 95% of the time, like you're going to catch yourself on the stumble or arrest the fall or whatever. But there's always that chance that it just doesn't work out in your favor, and it's always a risk.
Or I feel like you're scrambling over a ton of rocks all the time. You're probably scrambling way more than I ever have on like the alpine climbing, but you're going over these big boulders, and like they fell at some point, so another one could fall at some point as well. And that's whenever I do, like when I'm by mountains, it's like that's crazy.
Yeah, like, think about like the natural events that happen to kind of like make those shapes and like just that you're in and stuff. Yeah, and even climbing up some of those like talus fields and stuff. We were on a climb earlier this spring that's notorious for really big, really loose rock. And I remember, every step we took, like everything just like shifted under us, and it was just the most tedious, like stressful little slope I've ever done. But I remember just standing on this one rock, and I had to have been standing there for like 30 seconds and like waiting for my one of my climbing partners to kind of pass above me. And thought I was good because I'd been standing up for a little bit, and all of a sudden everything kind of like shifted from under me. So it was constantly moving, and you're trying to be conscious of where you are in relation to your partners and your team, because you get rocks down. I think one of the gals dodged a rock that was like microwave size that came kind of like tumbling out from somebody else. But
That's nuts.
It's stressful, but doable. So as long as you're making the right decisions and keeping good spacing and everything. But yeah, it keeps it exciting.
What has been like the sketchiest climb you've done, or climbing event that has happened?
Gosh, that's hard. My mind like goes back to my accident, but that was kind of like a user error. But I think it's just like a combination of like little moments. I'm a fairly conservative climber. After having my accident, and I think
She's
that
smart.
and I think my accident kind of shaped that. Like we're making dumb decisions, I think, but we had safety in place that allowed it to not be worse than it was. I sort of respect that, and I think it was really humbling, because I think there's a mentality of like, it's never happened to me, like, or like, that's never going to happen to me, like it happens to other people, but like I'm safe in it, like I'll be fine. And so I think having an accident sort of reminded me of that I'm not invincible. And so I'm pretty good at like pulling back when I don't like a situation, but there's been different moments where, like we're on steep snow and the sun is heating up and it feels like the snow is going to like come out from under you. And same thing with like rock and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't have any like crazy exposed stories or that kind of stuff.
That's really good.
Yeah. There's always little moments where you're kind of in a situation and you're like, holy crap, this is terrifying and I hate this and I want to go home. And why do I do this? Why am I here? And then you kind of get past that crux and you're like, oh yeah, like I'm capable. I did that. I was safe. And now I'm on the summit and it feels great. So. Oh, did you freeze?
Ray, can you hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Okay. So can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. So what goals do you have for alpinism? I'm sure there's like routes or mountains or.
That's actually a really great question. I've kind of had this like journey over the last couple of years with my goals and sort of like my motivation, which is, I was actually talking to a friend about this coming on your podcast, and I love the name and I resonate with the name so much of like, what's your why? Because I kind of had this journey, I would say last year, of sort of having to refine that. Because it was just kind of, I was in a place and in some relationships that sort of were pulling me away from what initially pulled me to mountaineering. And I think I started climbing for the wrong reasons. And I think it's easy to sort of fall into this mindset of like keeping up with the Joneses and like imposter syndrome and comparison and not feeling like you're climbing hard enough or like doing big things. And I think it's easy to fall into that in every facet of life, right? Like, I don't have a house yet, or like, I don't have the job I thought I'd have, or that kind of stuff. And you can spiral pretty quickly. And so I felt like I kind of fell away from why I started climbing in the first place. And I went through a ton of changes last spring in my life, and decided to sort of step away a little bit. And I ended up signing up for a marathon, because what else do you do when you have a bunch of life changes? I ran some halves, but I never ran a full. So I figured, like, let's try something new. And I was feeling so good. And I had all these goals for last summer, including the marathon and like different peaks I wanted to get. And then I got hurt. I got injured from like overtraining and just running a lot. And so that forced me to slow down and sort of like sit with myself. I spent a lot of time on my paddleboard. And it just sucked. Like it was a bummer, because my friends were off like getting these objectives that I was like supposed to be with them on. And it was really hard to like sit in the lowlands and not do it. Cause I think that mentality of like, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not doing hard things, like I'm like falling behind, or like I'm going to get left behind. But I think having that space from the mountains allowed me to like realize what it was that I missed about them. And I think that kind of like brought me back to like why I climb, and sort of helped me rewrite sort of like my motivations. And I think going into this year, like this alpine season, I've been able to be more true to myself and authentic to what it is that I want to do in the mountains. And so bringing it back with goals, I have a running list. I think everybody does, of peaks that they want to do and routes they want to do. I don't really have anything like set as a priority, because I found that when I had these really strict goals in the summertime and I didn't meet them, I was really hard on myself.
Yeah.
And I've had so much fun this summer, just kind of like going after the opportunities that become available and just kind of going with the flow. And you're still checking off a list, right? I still have peaks that I want to do and objectives that I want to get, but I haven't tied myself to anything with that.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think at this time, I'm really enjoying just kind of more of this like go with the flow, like let's kind of see what happens thing. But I think my main goal is just to keep learning and growing. And I've always loved learning, I think. And there's so much to learn when it comes to climbing. Like there's just always new technology.
There's always something
out. Yeah. So it's just endless opportunities. But yeah, I mean, if I had to name off some goals, that was kind of a long answer, but
no, you're good.
You know, there's like some peaks in South America, like Aconcagua would be cool. I still have yet to climb Rainier out here. I've gotten other peaks that I've really wanted to get. Maybe Denali one day, who knows? But I'm kind of
cool.
Rainier
would be cool.
Yeah. So
all of them would be cool.
Present. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. It's a good answer though too. I texted Avetta, my fiance, today, like at 1:00, and I was like, I'm so overwhelmed. What you just said about like your goals and all the things and like imposter syndrome, I was like, I feel that so hardcore because there's so many things that I try to do, whether it's like climbing or I've been trying to learn the guitar and I've been trying to surf all summer. I've been trying to continue coaching CrossFit and do jiu-jitsu and running. And I don't do any of them like fully. And so you kind of like spread yourself too thin to like thoroughly enjoy one.
Yeah.
But I was like, what am I doing? And now I'm trying to like write this wellness camp that I came up with yesterday, like a curriculum for it. And I was like, this is just insane. But like was just listening to a stupid, I don't know if you know who Theo Von is. Theo Von is, he's a stupid comedian, just kind of like a very goofy guy. And he was just like talking shit with Ric Flair, an old professional wrestler. And they're just like being silly. And I was like, what they're talking about has nothing to do with what I'm thinking about, but it's like, just do it for fun. Because I'm not going to be a professional at any of them. And I find joy doing them, even at the most basic level. So yeah, I think it really set me into a good space once I was just listening to this stupid podcast.
Yeah, no, that's great though. And I think like one of the lessons I think I've learned really intensely like the last year and a half is that it sounds really simple, but I have this finite amount of energy and I have to be careful where I put that because I think sometimes we can put it in places that don't bring us joy, right? And I think just like bringing consciousness to that and being mindful of where you're putting the energy and what you're getting in return from it can make a huge difference. And I think that really reshaped kind of how I'm feeling and sort of my life, just sort of taking the story of like, okay, like where can I pull back? What is it that brings me a lot of joy and how can I get more of that? And how can I balance the things that I still have to do, but like don't enjoy? So it's hard though. I mean, you want to do everything, you know?
No, I totally understand that. I totally get that. I see an activity and I'm like, I want to go do that. And then I impulse buy a fly fishing rod to go fly fishing on the Red River like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And like I had a great time. I didn't not a single bite, but
I've heard fly fishing is hard. So yeah. It looks like fun.
It is fun. And the casting's fun. It's a completely different thing. I hooked myself one time, which I was a lot more scared of happening until it happened.
Yeah.
The hooks are so much smaller.
Oh,
and so like it was super easy to get out. But it's so cool. It's way more of like almost like an art form to how you are like bringing it back and forward and the timing and the tempo. And I was like, this is sweet.
Yeah.
But
almost like kind of meditative in a way, or like very like
100%.
Yeah.
I had like I did like a super hard bike workout because like I have some muscle strains right now from running too much, like probably similar to what you had last summer.
Yeah.
And I did like a super hard bike workout early on, like 2 Saturdays ago, and then just spent like 4 hours at the river just trying to learn how to cast. I had no expectations of catching a fish. I had
Yeah.
no idea what flies to use or anything like that, what hooks to use. But I just found one that looked good and just like was just going back and forth for like 3-4 hours and just had a great time. And
That's
it was like
awesome.
very meditative and relaxing.
Did you grow up fishing, or was this kind of like your first dabble into the fishing
It was my
world?
first dabble into fly fishing,
Okay.
for sure. We had a lake place on Lake of the Woods when I was like
Oh.
really young, and my uncle lives in Roseau, if you know where that is,
Yeah.
northern Minnesota. And so we'd go up, like just rig their casting rods and dropping a hook to do like walleye fishing up there.
Yeah.
Or up like in the Boundary Waters area, we'd do some fishing, but nothing like serious or anything.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, I compare like fly fishing to like an archery hunt where you're like deep in the mountains, and like bait and cast is kind of like what they do around like North Dakota, Minnesota, where you just sit in a stand.
Yep.
And so you're way more in touch with nature, and so it's cool.
That's a good comparison. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I've fallen in love with the process of like I can't like 100% say this of like bow hunting.
Mhm.
I've never shot anything with my bow, so it's basically just been hiking with a bow. I've spent a lot of times like in the sandhills southwest of Fargo, if you know where those are.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful down there. And it's pretty remote. It's a great getaway from Fargo.
Yeah.
But I've never seen a deer while I was hunting. When I was trail running out there, I've seen plenty. Just
course.
never at the right time. When I'm making way more noise,
Yeah.
trail running, I see the deer.
You're
It's
like,
so
where are you
dumb.
when I'm out here for you?
Yeah, I have my dogs with me, and they make a ton of noise, and they smell terrible to the deer, but
Oh my
they're still there. It's so dumb.
That is
Yeah, I don't know. But so like looking forward, you kind of talked about how you just want to like find the joy in what you're doing. Is there anything like you have big plans for the rest of your climbing season? Because I would assume like you can't climb the peaks in the winter, or maybe it's not as good.
Some you can. It's like different skill sets, right? Like being able
Mhm.
to move an avalanche terrain and understanding snow conditions and being able to put up with the cold and
Yeah.
give summer days and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I think, I'm really happy with how this climbing season has gone. And we've checked off a number of really cool peaks the last like month and a half. So I'm pretty satisfied with that. So I'm just looking to like have more fun.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we're kind of moving into wildfire season. So there's some closures happening, and so it's hard to see some of your like favorite places kind of go up in flames, but there's a lot of people out there fighting the fires and doing the good work. So hopefully it doesn't get too bad, but yeah, so we're kind of seeing some of that smoke roll in. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it cooling off. It's been hot out here. Really? Yeah.
I know it's the opposite side of the state, but I was in Colville, Washington.
Oh yeah.
For like a business training a month and a half ago, and it was so cold. It was like 45 degrees. And so yeah, it was awful. It was so we prepared for like 65 to 80 is what they said it was going to be, and I didn't get over 50. So it was so cold.
Yeah, and I think out here, I mean, same with back home, right? Like August is kind of the hot month.
For sure.
At least on the west side, they call June January because it's still raining a bunch. Yeah, we've had about a month and a half of summer, and now the wildfires are coming, so it's kind of a bummer. But yeah, I mean, ski season will be here soon enough. All my friends keep pushing for snow, and I'm not quite ready for it. Like, I really like my trail runners and my light pack and like a little bit of sunshine, so I'm not ready for snow yet. But
do you do like the backcountry skiing or snowboarding?
I have dabbled in backcountry skiing a little bit. I've been getting my ski legs the last couple years, and I bought like a backcountry alpine terrain setup, but very slowly moving into that. Avalanches very much freak me out, so I'm trying to be very careful about how I progress into that.
I watched,
Yeah,
it looks so cool. I watched this guy Cody Townsend.
Yes, the 50
his
project
series on YouTube.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's so cool, and I want to try it so bad, but like the avalanches freak me out.
Yes, things can change very quickly, and you can be caught off guard pretty quick. And I have a cousin who grew up ski racing, and he's lost a number of friends in avalanches and that kind of stuff.
Oh,
So,
wow.
you know, it's real, the dangers out there. But like we talked about, I
Mhm.
mean, I think with any extreme sport, especially mountain sports, there's risk, and it's just knowing what risk you want to take and doing
Yeah.
what you can to mitigate the risk, right? Like we'll do what we can to stay safe, but there's never a guarantee.
Yeah, 100%.
You know?
And like it's so drastically different from like sport climbing where you have bolts, which is pretty dang safe. You might, unless you're kind of being dumb, the worst thing that's going to happen is like tear a knee or like break an arm.
Yeah.
So, because you're going to fall back into the wall and it's just going to happen, or you're going to like cheese grate yourself on a slab.
Yeah.
Which,
right. Yeah. It's a pretty bad road rash.
Yeah, I love slab. That's like my
I
favorite
do
type of
too.
climbing.
Nobody else likes slab. I love slab.
Which
And
is
it's
very surprising because a lot of
time.
people think that they enjoy the ability just to fall straight down.
Yeah.
But like a slab, no matter where you fall, you're gonna hit the wall.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're
So-
gonna drag on the wall a little bit.
Yep. No,
Yeah.
I freaking love slab. And like South Dakota Black Hills
Mhm.
is like amazing slab climbing.
I'm gonna have to add it to my list.
It's like you can do some multi-pitch out there, which I don't know how to multi-pitch. So I always just climb up to like sport climbing height, maybe 100 feet, and then go back down. But oh, it's so beautiful. And these weird spires out there where the rappelling is sketchy as hell.
Really?
You and your partner get to the top, and I've never done this before, but my same friend whose dad fell in Devil's Tower was telling us about it. You get to the top, and then you rappel down opposite sides. So you're on this big spire, and you rappel down opposite sides, and you have to go even with each other the whole way down. You have to kind of, at the top, it's very narrow. Like it might be as narrow as like 3 feet wide at the top in like a circle, if that. But at the bottom, you're like 20 feet, 30 feet apart, and so like yell to each other to like make sure you're like even.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that's kind of wild, but it was super cool to try.
That's fun. I've never heard of that before. That's cool.
No, South Dakota is like a really cool. The Black Hills area has everything from like crazy cliff edges and like Sturgis and Spearfish area to amazing granite spires and big granite faces right behind Mount Rushmore.
Oh yeah.
Like right behind Mount Rushmore is amazing climbing.
Is that the Needles? Is that what that's called?
The Needles is over there too.
Yeah.
And the Needles is where I did probably my favorite climb, probably also my sketchiest climb.
Really? What was sketchy about it?
So there was the anchor, and then the last like bolt spacing was like probably like 40 feet. But it was like you get to the top of this little false summit, and you put a quick dry in, and you kind of go over this little like cliff thing, and then you get to like the last face, which is about 12 feet high, and so you can't reach to the top of it.
Yeah.
And so you have to make one more like decently hard move to get to the next quick draw. And so if you fall on that, and you have a place to sit, which is about like a foot wide, maybe like 2 feet wide, something like that. In my mind, I'm going to exaggerate it because it was like 2 years ago now that I did this one. But you have to stand on that little edge, brace yourself against a wall, and then do a fairly hard move. Like the crux of the climb is right there.
Oh no.
And then if you were to fall, you're falling like 80 feet because you have like you're 40 feet out from your last quick draw.
Like super run out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
man.
So it was a good time. I liked it.
I'll
Once
make
I got it.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Once you're like clipped
Absolutely.
in and safe, you're like, that was really exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But we're at about an hour. So I know we didn't like specifically say it, but I want to ask you, since it kind of sounds like you thought about it, like, what is your why?
Oh man. It's a hard question. I think there's like, it might be multiple answers, I think.
That's okay.
I think it's something that brings me joy. I think it's something that I can do where I can continue to learn. And there's kind of a pride that comes with it too, right? Like in achieving something and knowing that you've put in the work to get there, and it's all like paying off and sort of building the knowledge. I also think there's something really meditative about it, right? And it's this like mind body connection. I think like when you're out there, I'm sure you felt the same thing, right? Like when you're on lead, you're on the wall, you don't have space to think about anything else. Like it's truly like the only time that I feel like I'm really present with myself, and that I feel like my mind's connected to my body, because my next step matters, and all I can think about is like where I'm going next and how I'm being careful and what the route is. And it's just, you're moving in such like a connected way, and you don't have time to think about what you have to do at work or problems at home, because you have to be present when you're on a glacier or when you're on rock or climbing. And I think it's a really cool experience. But yeah, I think ultimately it's just like I get to play in really beautiful places and meet like a ton of really incredible people. And I think that's my favorite part. And I want to keep doing that and hopefully give back, I think, one day, and mentor people the same way that I've been kind of taken under people's wings and mentored. I think it's a really cool community. And I think it's just really special to be able to explore in these beautiful places and, see the glaciers before they're gone. And it's just something that kind of speaks to my soul and brings me joy, So,
well, if I ever make it out to Seattle, will you let me take along on an alpine adventure?
Absolutely.
Sweet. I'll be out in Seattle in a month.
Perfect. Deal.
No, I'll actually be in Portland, but I was supposed to be in Seattle. It got switched, but sometime it'd be so cool.
Yeah.
Was there any last words of wisdom you want to share? Anything like that?
I think like if I had to say anything, I think it would be, if you feel like called to something and you feel inspired by something, as random as it might seem, because climbing felt so random to me, like you just have to go for it. And I think that honestly, it was harder. And I think I had a lot more like uncomfortable moments than I expected, but in the end, like it was just worth it. And I think it's worth the discomfort. It's worth kind of the challenges and the roadblocks that you face, because I think you come out stronger on the other side. And I truly believe that like you can't fail. And the only way you fail is if you stop trying, right? Yeah. Like as long as you're continuing to like push yourself and grow and get better, like you're not going to fail at what you do. And as long as you're kind of chasing something that's authentic to you, like it's worth it. And there's purpose and meaning behind it. So like, listen to that. Don't pay any mind to people who tell you it's dumb, and like, just do it. You got to live your life for you, and it'll be worth it in the end. So.
Gotcha. That's a great way to end. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me. I was honored.
Yeah, absolutely. Good luck with the rest of your season and moving into snow. Hopefully it holds off a little bit.
Yes.
But no, thank you for coming on.
Yes, thank you. It's good to talk to you.
Yeah, you as well. See ya.
All right, guys, that was an awesome episode of the podcast, and I really thank you for giving it a listen. We should have more next week, so come on out and give it a listen next week. But for now, keep it real, keep it sleazy. Talk to you later.